Several years ago, our next guest burst onto the thriller scene with the international best-selling novel Final Girls, which won all kinds of awards, including the ITW Award for Best Hardcover. Since then, he has become one of the best writers on the planet at creating psychological suspense, turning out 5 must-read thrillers so far. Riley Sager, welcome to Thriller Talk.
Hey there. Thanks for having me.
Before we get too into the books and other stuff, I just want to ask because I've wondered this for a while now. So the pen name Riley Sager, where'd that come from? Why that name specifically?
The pen name, it fascinates a lot of people, and I think from the outside it really is fascinating. But the reality is, it's so boring. Like it was, Final Girls was written. My agent said this is amazing, and it could be like this breakout book for you. We need to use a different name,
Mhm.
and for reasons, publishing, weirdness, sales, all that kind of thing. So she said, think of a name, which people really don't have to do that because you're
Yeah.
given your name. And so I'm like, oh my God, so many choices. So I originally was going to go with initials, and I was going to use my parents' initials. Their names are Ray and Linda. So I was going to be RL. And I mentioned Sager because I think of a family name. And my grandmother's maiden name was Sager. And she's like, oh, I like the sound of that. So I was going to be RL Sager. And I'm like, this is brilliant. And I thought that for like an entire minute before being like, R.L. Stein sort of
Yes,
has
that's
the market
exactly what I thought, exactly as soon as you said that.
cornered on RL. So what? And then it just popped in. I'm like, Riley, that works. And
Yeah.
that's really how it happened. And now it's so weird because I answer to both now. I answer my real name, and just anyone just says Riley. I'm like, yeah, I'm here.
And it's nice that it has both the R and the L in it, so you still honored, right,
Yeah.
your family. So I think that's a brilliant idea. It's a great name too. I think that a lot of people don't realize it's important for things to be easy to spell, right? When people look you up, online or at the bookstore or whatever, and that works beautifully. So I think well chosen. So setting is
It's businessy things that people don't think about.
Mhm.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I talked over you there.
No, please go ahead.
Well, one, I should warn you that I just got a thing saying my internet connection is unstable, so that's fun. But so I'm glad you guys can edit things.
Yeah, it actually
But yeah,
froze.
continue with your question.
It just actually froze for a little
Oh,
bit there too. So maybe what we should do, if you don't mind, why don't we have you do your the answer to the name over because you froze in the middle of that, and then I'll just tell the editor to take out the first part. Okay. So go
okay.
ahead, Ryan.
You just want me to re-ask it?
Yeah.
Sorry.
The pen name Riley Sager, where did that come from, and why that name specifically?
Well, it's interesting. There's so much interest in the pen name from the outside, and I understand that there is some interest there. But really, the truth is that it's really so boring and not eventful. Um, I wrote Final Girls, and my agent read it and said, "This is amazing. This could be a breakout book. We need to use a different name for all types of publishing reasons and past sales and all of this kind of thing that people don't really think about that goes into making a writing career." And I'm like, okay, what name? Because you don't really, you're given your name. You don't really think about all of these options available to you. And so originally I wanted to do something with my parents' initials. Their names are Ray and Linda. So immediately I thought RL. And my grandmother's maiden name is Sager. And so my agent was like, oh, I like the ring of that. So it was RL Sager. And I thought it was a brilliant idea for like a minute until I realized that RL Stein sort of cornered the market on those particular initials. And I'm like, oh, crap. That was such a good idea, too. So then I thought, well, Riley is kind of the combination of that. So that works. And that's how I became Riley Sager.
And I love as well that you still, honored your parents with the R on the L. So it's still kind of a nice nod to your family. But it also, we talked about how important it is for names to be easily spelled and, to type into computer, whether people are looking for your books, online or in libraries or in bookstores, and something that people don't really think about.
Yeah, and it's also thankfully really easy to sign, because that was when I first had to like sign something using that name. I was like, I've never written this name before, so how do I do that? And so it's actually like really flows off the pen quite well, which is nice.
So you also get to have an alter ego, which is kind of fun too, right?
Yeah, and it does provide just sort of, I mean, my real name's easy to look up. It's on the copyright page of all my books, so it's not like this massive secret. But it does provide like a little bit of buffer of privacy sometimes, which I do appreciate.
I'm sure. So setting is an incredibly important element in your books. I think you do an extraordinary job with it. Very moody and very palpable. And I wonder, how do you go about developing your settings and choosing your settings for these novels?
Well, I like to think that a lot of times the setting is partly a character. And like in Lock Every Door, that building, the Bartholomew, was definitely the main character other than Jules. And in Home Before Dark, that haunted house was a character.
Mhm.
And in Survive the Night, that the character just happens to be this Pontiac Grand Dam that the two people are in for most of the book. And I just wanted to make it as confined a space as possible and have Charlie, the main character, feel as utterly trapped as possible. And I wanted the reader to feel as trapped as she did. And it helped that a friend of mine in college drove that exact Pontiac Grand Dam. And so before I started writing, I emailed him and I said, "You remember that car, right? Tell me literally everything about it." And he came through. He gave me like this whole like pages long response of like all the quirks and details of his Pontiac Grand Dam.
That's so awesome.
I was very appreciative of that. It saved me a lot of research.
Um, Final Girls, which we've already touched on and mentioned a little bit, that book was such a massive hit. And you've had great books since, don't get me wrong. But I can't help but wonder, when you have a book that's that successful, that well received, do you feel pressure after that
Oh,
to deliver another one like that?
my follow up the last time I lied was the hardest thing I had to do, because it was I had written sort of half of it before Final Girl started to get this groundswell of insane attention, and then the second half after all of this attention. And I appreciate what he did. He changed my life. But when Stephen King tweeted about Final Girls, that gets into your head, because the only thing I was thinking when writing The Last Time I Lied was Stephen King could possibly read this and he will judge me.
Mhm.
And that was just such a paralyzing thought to have in my brain as I'm trying to finish this book. So yes, it made things exceedingly difficult. And now I've finally started to sort of have more confidence in myself and not really think about the outside world when I'm writing something. So now I can really focus on the composition of a book.
Have you had any interactions with Stephen after that?
Only that he tweeted that he liked Lock Every Door a couple weeks ago. So that was so I'm so thrilled that he's read my books and likes them. But no, we've never been in touch. I would not know what to say to him. I would be just this babbling, incoherent mess. And so it's probably best that we never meet.
Well, it's funny because I know he's a huge fan of Linwood Barclays as well, and I think Linwood met him before, and he goes, something about the dedication, because Linwood has dedicated every single book to his wonderful wife Neetha, and Stephen King remembered that. Like, so
Oh
that just
wow.
shows you what a kind of grounded, kind person he is, and that he really does care about people. So, speaking of which, you have written some phenomenal female point of view characters. And I wondered if you had any advice about your skills and methods about for authors when you write about people that you aren't the same as, and how do you kind of get inside that head and make it as authentic and realistic as possible?
Yeah, it's interesting, and it's something that just happened accidentally, really. With Final Girls, that is the trope of horror movies. It's the final girl. And I always joke that if it was Final Boys, my career would probably be very different right now. But because that's the trope, I knew that this book had to be written from the point of view of a final girl. And I didn't really give it much thought after that. Like I knew the character so well. She was just in my head immediately that I was almost like channeling her thoughts onto the page. And so that's something that I sort of try to continue. Like when I'm writing, because I do write first person most of the time, I hear like their voice in my head, not in a weird way, but just like I imagine what how they sound, and I just sort of try to transcribe that onto the page. And also another trick that I do is, and I've said this before, and some people might take issue with it, but like I treat my characters not as a gender. I treat them as a person. And
Mhm.
so I look at all of the things that have happened to them in their lives and how they would react in certain situations. And so I don't think, oh, how would a woman react right now? I think, how would Charlie in Survive the Night, based on all of the things that have happened to her in her life and all the things that are going on now, how would she specifically react to this situation? And I think that that's really helped me.
So even before you were an author, you were still writing. I heard that you were a journalist, even an editor at one point. Is that true? And when did you know you wanted to write thrillers? What made you finally take the jump to do so?
Well, yeah, I spent 20 years in newspapers,
Wow.
and I got to do a lot of things there. And so it was really great training for a career as an author. As for when I wanted to write a book, I don't know. I think it was always there. Like, when was it for you guys? Like, has it always been like you just it's there? Like, I can't pinpoint a moment. It was just always something that I wanted to try to do. And I think it's because I loved reading so much as a kid that it was so fun to escape into another world that I thought it might also be fun to create a world that other people escape into. And after many fits and starts, I think all of us have these unfinished 100 pages or 50 pages of things like lying around on floppy disks somewhere that, finally you get an idea that works and you can actually tame into a book. So that's really what it was. It was just this subconscious need, I guess, to tell a story.
Mhm. Yeah, that's powerful. I mean, when I read David Morrell's Brotherhood of the Rose, I was so transported into another world, and I love the international thriller so much. I, at that point, was in boarding school, and I said to myself, one day, I really hope that I can transport someone else into that world, like as you said. So I think that it's powerful when you read, like you said, you kind of think what a gift it is to escape.
Yeah, and there have been so many books that I've read in my life that have just taken me out of reality and put me in this whole other universe, and that I just kind of never wanted to leave.
Oh yeah.
So, one of the reasons that many readers love your work is that we can all identify with the financial problems that your characters often have. And usually that takes them somewhere very bad. Um, does that theme in your work arise from personal circumstances, a larger worldview, or both?
Definitely personal circumstances. Before Final Girls, as I said, I was in newspapers until one day I wasn't. Not by choice. And so when that axe falls, it's just like, what am I going to do? And I spent a year unemployed, unable to get like a job other than a part-time job working in a library. And I was just so grateful for that library job because it was like I'm finally earning something again. And oh my God, this is but during that year, it was terrifying because everything was uncertain. It was like I do not know if I'm ever going to get a job again or how I'm going to pay this bill or and it never left me. It was just constantly in the back of my thoughts and I would like some nights like just wake up with hives, like just anxiety hives. And so when it came time to write Jules and Lock Every Door, I knew that that was something I wanted to explore. Like what makes someone stay in a situation that is clearly not safe and what kind of desperation drives that. And in her case, it's like she desperately needs money. And that's what keeps her inside that building, even though she should be running out that door. And it really was gratifying to hear from readers who said, like, I was not expecting an examination of economic disparity in this thriller, but I feel seen and I thank you for that. And so that was really nice to hear.
That's such a great answer too, because I think a lot of times the casual readers, they don't think of the author as a real person that goes through and lives a lot of these experiences, right? It's just a name and a face on the back flap, and a story to go with it. So that's a great answer, man, and thank you for that. What's your writing process like? So I wanted to ask you this for a while. Like, what is it like now, and has it changed over the course of your career? Are you an outliner? Do you have a dedicated writing schedule? Just take us through your routine if you don't mind.
My routine is that I don't have one, and I really need to get one. It's no, it's I guess my routine is veering from like utter laziness to obsession with a book and then back again, sometimes like several times in the composition of a book. I used to be an outliner. I used to outline everything so much. And sometimes I still do, like Home Before Dark, because it was two books in one and they were like playing off of each other. That had to be outlined within an inch of its life because it was just that complex. Survive the Night. I was like, you know what? I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to hop in the car and see where it takes me. And I found it really fun and refreshing to do that. So the book I'm working on now, I really haven't outlined. I've know the end game, but not how I'm going to get there. And
Is your
so
publisher cool with that, by the way? So I can see the publisher loving the outline, but I'm trying to picture you telling like the agent, the publisher, I'm just going to get in the car and see where it goes. Is everyone cool with your process at this point?
yeah, it's I think my process is a little bit different than others because all I need to do is give them like one page of sort of plot synopsis.
Okay.
So I don't really need to tell them the ending. I don't need to tell them, where it's going. I'm just like, this is what it is. Here's like, the 5-word pitch if you need it for to give to marketing or whatnot. Are we good to go? Should I write this? And so far every time they've been like, yeah, write it. And so I haven't had to do like a detailed outline going through from start to finish and chapter by chapter to present to them.
Yeah, I think of synopsis as a four-letter word. I'm with you all the way. I just think it's so organic and it comes together in a natural way. And I feel like sometimes too that you can't fight who you are as a writer. Like there are people like Jeffrey Deaver who does 110-page outlines for 400-page books, brilliant author, brilliant books, but that works for him. But there's other people that just can't do it. So I applaud you for standing your ground.
And also things change. Like that's you're like you think this book is going to start out one way and you could put that in your lengthy synopsis
Yeah.
and then halfway through something's going to pop into your head that might be 10 times better.
Yeah.
And so all of that synopsis work you've done is out the window.
Agreed. So the dueling narrator structure of Home Before Dark was a bold choice that really paid off. Did the idea of that structure come to you first, or did it serve the plot? And are you considering building more novels around these innovative structures?
With Home Before Dark, I was inspired by the Amityville Horror, and more specifically, the story behind the Amityville Horror. Like, especially the kids. Like, I think it's generally acknowledged that they made all of this up. And so I thought, what is it like to be the child of that? Like, and to have that be your legacy, that your family lied about like a haunted house. And so I was going to just really do it from the main character Maggie, her perspective as being a child of like this infamous haunted house book. But I knew that there needed to be excerpts. And then it just hit me as I was sort of brainstorming. No, there needs to be more than excerpts. There needs to be the entire book her father wrote. And that really would be the unreliable narrator in the situation. And it sounded like it was, I'm like, oh, I'm so brilliant. But the reality, when it came time to write two books and put them in one book and have them be told by different voices and different timelines, yet still reflect each other, like, it wasn't until I was like in the thick of it that I was like, why? Why did I pick this idea? Like, why did I decide to inflict this on myself?
Well, you handled it brilliantly, so you should be proud. And I think,
Oh,
like,
thank you.
I always love David Morrell's advice. He says, if you're going to spend a year on a book, each book, challenge yourself somehow. So it sounds like you did, and you succeeded.
Yeah, it was so difficult. Like, I'm still tired from it, even 2 years later. But it was just, I'm really proud that I did manage to pull it off somehow. And I'm not sure how I did it, but now that it's done, I'm like, "Phew, I did that, and I'm proud of that. So good
Where did
job."
you,
It
where
truly
did
is
you
brilliant, by
struggle?
the way. Just the concept, but the execution too. I mean, it truly is a brilliant book, the way that you delivered it,
Oh,
and
thank you so much.
so have went in the wrong way. Had it not been done right. I love that book, but and I was going to ask you more about it, but you kind of answered my questions. But hearing you talk about it, it sounds very difficult. Was it your most difficult book to write, or out of everything you've written so far, is there one that truly stands above the rest that was really hard for you to get your arms around and actually put on the page?
That Home Before Dark was that book.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really, and part of it was, Final Girls I wrote so fast. I just was like not even sure how that book like happened, but it did so quickly. Last time I lied was, because Stephen King was in my head judging me. It was just so hard. And then Lock Every Door was really kind of easy. So I'm like, oh great, I've got this down now. I know what I'm doing. And then here came Home Before Dark, and I was like, I literally don't know what I'm doing. Like, and it was one of those things where if it hadn't been too late, like my agent and editor were like, okay, this is your next book. When is it going to be done? And I'm like, soon. And meanwhile, I'm just like, locked in this room, sitting like I write in that easy chair right there. Just I was there for like 14 hours a day, some days for like 2 months, just banging out as many words as possible to meet my deadline. And it's a miracle that that book happened and that I didn't just lose it while while writing it.
So do you sit on your recliner and on your laptop?
Yeah, yeah, it's a nice it's a rocking chair. I sit with my laptop on my lap, which is terrible for my posture, and that's how I write. This desk that I'm sitting at right now is only used for like Zooms. So
I love it. So your work is certainly earning its place amongst the classic horror works of all time. And I get a sense from your writing, and we touched on this a few minutes ago, that you're really respectful of the genre and your place in it. For instance, there are clear echoes of Amityville Horror and Rosemary's Baby in your novels. What classic horror tales would you recommend to readers who want to understand your deep connection to the genre?
oh gosh. Um, ooh, that's such a good question. The Haunting of Hill House because
Mm.
it's just amazing, and The Shining also because it's just amazing. um, one of the best, scariest books I've read in my life was Bird Box by Josh Mallerman,
Mhm.
and I just got his new one, Goblin, and I just can't wait to read it. Um, yeah, I don't know. Like there's just something wonderful about being scared and letting a book just sort of crawl into your psyche and like just touch all those fear buttons that you have. And I hope that I can do the same thing, but also there's a part of me that's like I can't touch what these people are doing, so I'll just, hope that I can come somewhere close to their level.
Well, I will tell you right now, it's only wonderful being scared in like book or movie form. I let the dog out last night and the bushes moved a little bit. And I'm telling you right now, that's not a wonderful feeling at all. But when it's in a book form and it's the escape and you kind of know it's not real and you get to experience things through, that element, then I think it's absolutely special. And you do it so well. You do it so
Oh,
well.
thank you.
Um, Before we let you go, what's next, and when can readers expect to get their hands on the next book?
Next, as in Survive the Night, which is June, or next after that?
No, let's talk Survive the Night.
Okay. Yeah, Survive the Night is June 29th, and I'm really super excited about it. It's the quick plot is it's a girl, a killer in a car. And that's pretty much what my conception of it was, where it is these two people in a car driving down the highway at night, and one of them is just severely damaged. She's grieving, she's just not in the right frame of mind. She's returning home from college, and the other is a guy who might be a serial killer. And so a lot of the book is just two people in a car sort of playing mind games with each other and trying to keep them from finding out how much the other one suspects they know about each other. And it was quite different from my other books in that there is no dual timeline. There's really no flashbacks. After Home Before Dark and its complexity, I really wanted something that literally did feel like a car speeding down the highway. And so I just wanted fast and simple and clean and hopefully suspenseful and scary.
Well, Survive the Night, that's in stores June 29th. We look
Yes, June
forward to that,
29th.
man. Thank you so much for coming on Thriller Talk.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun.
It's been an absolute pleasure, Riley, and good luck with your launch. We're here to help.
Thank you.